The girl had always been drawn to music. Ever since she could remember, the soft, melodic sounds that filled her ears when she passed by the piano at school had a strange pull on her heart. She didn't know much about music theory, and she couldn't read the sheet music that hung in the classroom like strange symbols, but she felt the rhythm in her fingers and the emotion in her heart. It was as if the piano called to her, and she wanted nothing more than to answer. Every day during breaks, she would wander to the music room when no teacher was around. She would sit in front of the old piano, her small fingers hovering over the keys, unsure at first. The piano was dusty and its keys were worn from years of use, but to her it didn't matter. She pressed a few notes and a shaky melody came out. It wasn't perfect, not by any means, but it was music, and it felt like a small triumph. At first she was careful. She thought she could practice quietly, just enjoying the music without anyone noticing. But children are curious, and her small group of classmates began to see her sitting there, fumbling through notes. Some of them laughed at her the first time. They pointed and whispered, making jokes about how she didn't even know what she was doing. "Look at her. She thinks she's a pianist," one of them said, and the others joined in. The laughter stung, but she kept playing, hoping that if she ignored it, they would eventually stop. It wasn't easy. Every time someone snickered, she felt a knot in her stomach, a little voice in her head asking why she even tried. Her fingers sometimes trembled, and she made mistakes that made her cheeks flush, but she couldn't stop. There was something about the sound of the keys that made her heart beat faster, something about the music that felt like it was speaking for her when words failed. Over the next few days, the teasing continued. Some children started leaving notes in her locker, calling her silly names and saying she should give up. They made jokes in class and stared at her with smirks whenever she walked past. It could have been too much for anyone, but she held on to a quiet determination. She would remind herself that these people didn't understand the way music felt inside her, the way it made her feel alive. Their laughter was just noise that would fade, but her love for the piano was something real. She started practicing at home too. Her family didn't have a piano, but she had a small keyboard. She would spend hours after school, hitting the keys and trying to remember the melodies she had learned in the music room. Sometimes she cried when she couldn't get a note right, but other times she would smile, feeling proud when a tune finally sounded the way she imagined. Each small success was a reminder that her music could grow stronger, that she could improve if she kept trying. Her teacher, a kind woman who noticed her love for music, once told her, "Talent comes from persistence, not from being perfect at first." Those words stayed with her, echoing in her mind every time she sat down at the piano. She began to understand that it wasn't about being the best or impressing others. It was about letting the music out, about expressing herself through the keys and the sounds that came from her heart. Despite the laughter and teasing at school, she found little moments of happiness that kept her going. There were mornings when she would arrive early, alone in the music room, and play just for herself. The first note would come softly, hesitant, and then her confidence would grow with each key she pressed. She would imagine herself playing on a grand stage one day, not for the approval of the mockers, but simply because music was a part of her. That vision gave her a quiet strength. Even though she was mocked, she began to notice small changes in herself. Her fingers moved more fluidly across the keys, and she started creating her own melodies instead of copying songs she had heard. She learned to listen closely to each note and to adjust the way she played until it sounded right to her. Each mistake became a lesson, each wrong note a step toward learning. She realized that music wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence and heart. The teasing never fully went away. Sometimes it was subtle, a quiet giggle in the corner of the classroom, a rolling of eyes when she mentioned the piano. Other times it was louder, with classmates openly mocking her attempts to play. But she had learned to ignore the noise, to focus on the sound of the keys under her fingers and the feeling in her chest. She discovered that the more she played, the less the laughter affected her. The music became her shield, her escape, and her source of joy. One afternoon, she stayed in the music room longer than usual. The sun had dipped low and the room was bathed in golden light. She played a melody she had made up herself, a song full of hope and determination. For the first time, she didn't think about the laughter, the teasing, or the doubt. She only felt the music, letting it flow through her and fill the room. When she finished, she looked around, expecting to see an empty room. Instead, she noticed a classmate standing at the door. silently watching her. The girl's heart skipped a beat. For a moment she felt nervous, unsure of how the observer would react. The classmate didn't laugh. They just smiled slightly and nodded before walking away. That small moment of acknowledgement, even silent, felt like a reward. It reminded her that maybe, just maybe, not everyone saw her music as something foolish. That tiny spark of hope gave her courage to keep practicing, to keep believing in herself even when others didn't. Days turned into weeks, and the girl's commitment didn't waver. Every challenge, every mocking word, every moment of doubt became fuel for her passion. She continued to practice after school, sometimes alone, sometimes with the small audience of one or two classmates who had begun to notice her dedication. Each day her music became a little stronger, a little more confident, and a little more expressive. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It had become a friend, a companion, and a voice that spoke for her when words could not. Her journey had only just begun, but already she had discovered the resilience within herself. The laughter that once seemed unbearable had become something she could rise above. The teasing that threatened to break her spirit had instead strengthened it. And in the quiet moments when she sat at the piano, lost in the melodies she created, she knew one thing for certain. No matter what others said, she would never stop playing. Her love for music was hers alone, and that was worth more than anyone's approval. The girl's dedication to the piano grew stronger with each passing day. While the laughter and mocking continued at school, she discovered a secret place where she could truly connect with her music. It was the small corner of her home where a tiny keyboard sat, worn from years of use but still full of possibility. Every evening after finishing her homework and chores, she would sit in that corner and let the music take over. At first, her practice was simple. She would repeat the same notes she had learned at school, slowly growing more comfortable with each attempt. Sometimes she would hit the wrong keys and let out a frustrated sigh. But she quickly realized that frustration was part of learning. Mistakes were not failures. They were stepping stones. Each time she made an error, she would try again, paying closer attention to the sound and the feel of the keys under her fingers. Her family noticed her commitment. They didn't fully understand the depth of her passion, but they saw her determination. Sometimes they would listen quietly from another room as she played, hearing the melodies grow richer and more confident. It was a subtle encouragement, a gentle reminder that she was not entirely alone in her journey. Even when no one was listening, she imagined herself performing for an audience that would appreciate her music, giving her the courage to keep going. The girl began to experiment. She tried new melodies, mixing notes together to create songs that sounded entirely her own. She listened to recordings of famous pianists online, learning to understand the rhythm, emotion, and expression that made music captivating. She would mimic the movements she saw in the videos, but soon she realized that she didn't need to copy anyone. Her own style began to emerge, soft and gentle at times, bold and lively at others, always carrying a piece of her heart. Despite the joy she found at home, the school environment remained challenging. Some students continued to make fun of her, whispering behind her back or giggling when she walked by. They didn't understand why she loved the piano so much, why she would devote hours to something they saw as silly. Their teasing could have discouraged her, but she had learned to treat it like background noise, unimportant and fleeting. She focused instead on the moments when her music felt real, moments when she could forget the world and simply play. Her teacher, noticing the persistence and progress, began giving her small tips during music class. They suggested new techniques and encouraged her to try more complex melodies. The girl took each suggestion seriously, practicing diligently and applying the advice as best as she could. The music room became a place of growth and learning, a sanctuary where she could explore her talent without judgment. The teacher's guidance, though simple, became a key part of her development, showing her that support could come from unexpected places. With each day, she noticed changes in herself. Her fingers moved more gracefully across the keys, and she could play longer pieces without losing focus. She learned to listen carefully to each note, adjusting her timing and touch until the melody sounded just right. She began to recognize patterns in music, understanding how one note led to another and how emotions could be expressed through sound. It was a slow process, but every small improvement filled her with pride. Her commitment also taught her patience. Music was not something that could be mastered overnight, and she learned to accept that growth came in small, steady steps. Some days were frustrating. She would stumble over a tricky passage or fail to recreate a melody she loved. But she reminded herself that every great pianist had faced challenges. Persistence was the key, and she was willing to invest the time and effort required. Outside the music room, life went on. She went to school, attended classes, and participated in ordinary activities, all while carrying her passion quietly with her. Some classmates continued to tease her, but she found a small circle of friends who admired her determination. They didn't fully understand her love for the piano, but they respected her commitment and sometimes even encouraged her to keep practicing. Their quiet support, though simple, made a noticeable difference in her confidence. The girl also discovered that music had a way of expressing what words could not. When she felt frustrated, lonely, or sad, she would pour those emotions into her playing. The piano became her voice, a means to communicate feelings that were too deep or complicated to explain. Each key pressed, each note played, carried a piece of her heart. The music was not just sound. It was a reflection of her inner world, and she began to understand that sharing it, even privately, was a powerful act. One afternoon, she decided to challenge herself further. She picked a complex piece she had heard online and tried to play it. At first, it was overwhelming. The notes seemed too fast, too complicated, and her fingers stumbled repeatedly. But instead of giving up, she broke the piece into smaller sections. She practiced each section slowly, repeating it until her fingers remembered the movements. Gradually, the melody started to emerge, imperfect at first, but steadily improving. By the end of the week, she could play the piece from start to finish, proud of her perseverance and growth. Her home practice sessions became longer and more meaningful. She discovered the beauty of playing with expression, learning how to make a note soft and tender or loud and commanding. She experimented with timing, allowing certain notes to linger while letting others flow quickly. Each session was a lesson in both technique and emotion, a combination that slowly transformed her playing from simple tunes into heartfelt music. One evening, her parents stopped by the room while she was playing. She had chosen one of her favorite pieces, and as she played, they listened silently. When she finished, they smiled and clapped softly. Their support, even if quiet, made her heart swell. She realized that encouragement didn't always have to be loud or grand. Sometimes just being acknowledged was enough to keep going. That moment reinforced her belief that music was a language that connected people, even in small, subtle ways. Over time, the girl's confidence grew. She no longer worried as much about what others thought. She knew that her passion for the piano was valid, regardless of the laughter or teasing she faced at school. The music had become a part of her identity, something that defined her in a way nothing else could. Every practice session, every melody, every small improvement was a step toward the person she wanted to become. Her perseverance started to pay off in small but noticeable ways. She could play longer, more complex pieces without losing focus. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, and her melodies carried emotion that touched even those who didn't understand the effort behind them. She discovered that music could transform her mood, calm her anxieties, and bring her joy in ways nothing else could. Each note she played reinforced the belief that her dedication was worthwhile. Even as the mocking at school continued, it no longer held power over her. The girl had found a refuge in music, a space where she could grow, express herself, and experience success on her own terms. She learned that passion and hard work could overcome doubt and criticism. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a source of strength, resilience, and hope. And though her journey was far from over, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, carrying her love for music with her like a quiet, unwavering light. The school announced that it would hold a talent show in a few weeks. The girl heard about it during lunch, when a group of students was excitedly discussing who would participate and what acts they would perform. Many students were planning singing performances, dances, and funny skits. When she thought about signing up, a mix of excitement and fear bubbled inside her. Her first instinct was to hesitate, worrying that the same classmates who mocked her would laugh even harder if she tried to perform in front of everyone. For days, she thought about the idea. She would imagine herself standing on stage, the bright lights shining down and her fingers touching the piano keys. In her mind, the music flowed perfectly and the audience was silent, listening attentively. She imagined the surprise on their faces when they heard her play beautifully, but then reality set in, and she remembered the teasing, the laughter, and the whispers that followed her every step at school. Doubt crept in, whispering that she wasn't ready, that it was better to stay invisible and avoid embarrassment. One afternoon, her music teacher noticed her quiet reflection during class. The teacher approached her gently and asked if she had considered participating in the talent show. The girl admitted her fear of being laughed at, her worry that she wasn't good enough and that she might fail in front of everyone. The teacher smiled softly and said, "The courage to try is more important than the applause. Music is about sharing what you feel. If you play from your heart, people will notice. Don't let fear decide for you." Those words lingered with her. She realized that this could be the opportunity to show herself what she was capable of. It wasn't about proving the mockers wrong. It was about stepping out of her comfort zone and letting the music she loved so much be heard. Slowly, determination replaced fear, and she made the decision to sign up for the talent show. She felt a thrill of excitement mixed with nervousness, but she knew it was a step she had to take. Once she had signed up, she began preparing seriously. She chose a piece that she had been practicing at home for months, one that combined emotion with technical skill. She wanted the audience to feel the music the way she did, to understand her story through the melody. Every day after school, she went to the music room and practiced with focus and intensity, repeating sections, adjusting timing, and perfecting her expression. At first, progress was slow. Some passages were difficult, requiring precise finger movements and careful control of volume and rhythm. She stumbled frequently, becoming frustrated at her mistakes. But instead of giving up, she broke the piece into smaller sections, focusing on mastering each part before putting them together. She learned to listen carefully, recognizing where she needed to improve and how to bring out the emotion in each note. Each practice session became a step closer to her goal, and she began to feel a quiet confidence building within her. She also learned to manage her nerves. Standing in front of the piano at school was different from practicing alone at home. The pressure of the talent show loomed, and she sometimes felt her hands trembling just thinking about the audience. To calm herself, she developed little routines before playing, taking deep breaths, visualizing the notes, and imagining the music flowing effortlessly from her fingers. These rituals helped her stay grounded and focused, turning nervous energy into determination. Her family continued to support her quietly. They listened to her play at home, offering small words of encouragement. Their quiet presence reminded her that she was not alone, even when the school environment felt harsh. The girl realized that support came in many forms, not just through applause or praise, but through understanding, patience, and simply believing in her efforts. The days leading up to the talent show were filled with anticipation. She imagined the moment she would walk onto the stage, the bright lights and the expectant faces in the audience. She tried to focus on the music rather than the judgment of others. Each practice session became a rehearsal, not just for the piano, but for herself, to trust in her abilities and to play with heart, no matter what happened. During one of the last practice sessions before the show, she felt a moment of breakthrough. A difficult passage that had troubled her for weeks finally flowed smoothly under her fingers. The music sounded expressive and alive, conveying the emotion she had intended from the beginning. She felt a surge of pride and relief, realizing that her dedication and perseverance were paying off. It wasn't just about performing in front of others. It was about discovering her own potential and proving to herself that she could achieve more than she had imagined. Her classmates continued to talk about the talent show, some with excitement, others with teasing remarks. A few of the students who had mocked her before whispered about whether she would even make it through her performance without messing up. She heard their words but refused to let them shake her focus. She knew that the only judgment that truly mattered was her own. Her goal was to share her music, to let the notes express what she could not put into words. As the day of the talent show arrived, the girl's nerves were at their peak. She arrived early, observing the preparations and the other acts rehearsing. The room was filled with energy, students moving around, parents chatting, and teachers organizing the schedule. She found a quiet corner and practiced a few last notes, letting the familiar melodies calm her racing heart. Each note reminded her of the weeks of effort, the hours of practice, and the perseverance that had brought her here. Finally, it was her turn. The moment came when her name was announced and she walked onto the stage. The bright lights shone down and she could see the audience filled with students, teachers, and parents. Her heart pounded and for a brief moment fear crept in, but she took a deep breath, placed her fingers on the keys and let the music flow. The first notes came softly, tentative, but gradually gained strength as she lost herself in the melody. As she played, she noticed the room growing quiet. The chatter and whispers faded, replaced by the sound of the piano and the emotion she poured into it. She closed her eyes, feeling the music connect with the audience in a way words never could. Each note told a part of her story, the struggles, the dedication, the joy, and the passion she had discovered along the way. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not for her mistakes or the teasing she had endured, but for her talent and her heart. The performance continued, flowing naturally, every note carrying intention and feeling. She was no longer thinking about the mockers, the audience, or the stage. She was entirely present in the music. When she reached the final note, she let it linger, savoring the silence that followed. The room erupted into applause, a sound she had never imagined could feel so powerful. The girl opened her eyes and saw faces of surprise, admiration, and even awe. Her music had spoken and the audience had listened. That moment marked a turning point. The girl realized that fear and doubt were only obstacles that could be overcome with courage and persistence. She had taken a step beyond her comfort zone, and the reward was not just the applause but the discovery of her own strength and potential. The experience taught her that music was more than notes on a page. It was a language of emotion, expression, and connection that could touch hearts and change perceptions. She stepped off the stage with a new sense of confidence, ready to continue her journey and let her music shine, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The day of the talent show had finally arrived, and the atmosphere in the school auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Students, parents, and teachers filled the seats, chatting and laughing, unaware of the nervous anticipation that built inside the girl. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, practicing countless hours, perfecting every note, and imagining herself playing flawlessly. Yet as she sat backstage waiting for her turn, her heart pounded and a swirl of nervous energy made her hands tremble slightly. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. The familiar weight of the piano keys under her fingers and the melodies she had practiced for weeks gave her a small sense of comfort. She reminded herself that she had worked hard, that she had prepared, and that the music she loved was worth sharing. She closed her eyes and replayed the piece in her mind, imagining every note flowing smoothly, every chord connecting to the next, and the music speaking for her heart. Finally, her name was called and she walked onto the stage. The bright lights were blinding at first, and the audience appeared larger than she had imagined. A hush fell over the room, and for a moment she felt the weight of all the eyes upon her. Some faces in the crowd belonged to classmates who had mocked her in the past, whispering and smirking at the thought of her performing. For a second, fear tried to take hold, but she pushed it away. She reminded herself that this was her moment, a chance to share her passion and dedication, not to prove anyone wrong. She sat down at the grand piano on the stage, the polished keys gleaming under the lights. Her fingers hovered above the keys and she felt a familiar surge of connection with the instrument. The first note she pressed was soft, hesitant, but as she continued, confidence began to flow. She played each chord with care, letting the melody grow naturally, slowly building in emotion and intensity. The audience listened in silence, captivated by the music that filled the room. With each passing moment, the girl lost herself in the melody. She no longer saw the faces of those who had mocked her. She only felt the music moving through her. Each note carried a piece of her story. The struggles, the dedication, the countless hours of practice, and the unwavering love she had for the piano. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision, conveying emotions that words could never express. The music spoke and the audience responded with rapt attention. As she reached the middle of the piece, she felt a deep sense of calm. The earlier nerves had melted away, replaced by a connection to the piano and the music that felt almost magical. The sounds were rich and expressive, flowing effortlessly from her fingertips. She could sense the emotions in the room shifting, the audience becoming immersed in her performance. Even those who had doubted her began to realize that this girl, once mocked and teased, had a remarkable talent that could not be ignored. The piece she had chosen was challenging, with complex passages and subtle shifts in tone and rhythm. She had spent hours mastering these sections, and now, in the heat of performance, she relied on both her preparation and her instinct. Each note was deliberate, each movement of her hands precise. She allowed herself to feel the music fully, letting it guide her fingers and her heart. The audience was silent, hanging on every note, their focus entirely on her performance. As she neared the end of the piece, she played with even more emotion, allowing the final notes to linger in the air. The music filled the auditorium, echoing off the walls, carrying the story of her perseverance, dedication, and love for the piano. She felt a sense of accomplishment, not just for completing the performance, but for expressing herself so fully, for letting the music convey what words could not. When the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence, as if the audience was holding its breath, absorbing the beauty of what they had just heard. Then applause erupted, growing louder and louder until it filled every corner of the room. The girl opened her eyes and looked at the audience, seeing faces filled with surprise, admiration, and awe. Even those who had once mocked her now looked at her with respect, their expressions changed by the power of her performance. The girl rose from the piano, her heart pounding with a mix of relief, pride, and joy. She had faced her fears, taken a risk, and shared her passion with the world. The applause continued, and she realized that the music had done more than impress the audience. It had transformed the way they saw her. She had turned doubt and ridicule into admiration, simply by playing from her heart. After the performance, students and teachers approached her, offering congratulations and words of praise. Some of the classmates who had teased her before admitted quietly that they had underestimated her. The girl listened politely, feeling a quiet satisfaction, but she also knew that the true reward was not the recognition or the applause. The real reward was the journey she had undertaken, the countless hours of practice, the perseverance in the face of mockery, and the courage to share her music with the world. That night, she reflected on the experience, thinking about how far she had come. She remembered the early days when her fingers trembled over the piano keys, and classmates laughed at her attempts. She thought about the hours spent practicing at home, the quiet moments of discovery, and the lessons learned from mistakes. Each step had led her to this moment of triumph, and she understood that every challenge had been an essential part of her growth. The performance also taught her an important lesson about courage and self-belief. She realized that fear and doubt would always exist, but they could be overcome with determination, practice, and passion. By facing her fears and stepping onto the stage, she had proven to herself that she was capable of more than she had imagined. The experience showed her that talent alone was not enough. It required courage, dedication, and the willingness to take risks. In the days following the talent show, her confidence continued to grow. She returned to the music room with a renewed sense of purpose, eager to continue improving her skills and exploring new melodies. The applause and recognition she had received at the show were gratifying, but they were secondary to the joy she found in playing the piano and expressing herself through music. Each practice session became a celebration of progress and discovery, a chance to deepen her connection with the instrument and the art she loved. Her journey also inspired others. Students who had once mocked her began to approach her with curiosity and admiration, asking for tips and showing interest in learning music themselves. Teachers encouraged her to participate in more performances, recognizing her talent and dedication. The girl realized that her perseverance had not only transformed her own life, but had also influenced those around her, showing that dedication and passion could inspire change in unexpected ways. Through this experience, the girl learned that music was more than just notes on a page or keys on a piano. It was a language that conveyed emotion, told stories, and connected people in ways words could not. She understood that sharing her music was not about seeking approval or praise, but about expressing herself authentically and touching the hearts of others. The power of music lay in its ability to communicate what was inside her soul, and she embraced this understanding with gratitude and excitement. The girl's performance at the talent show became a defining moment in her life. It marked the point where she transformed from a student who was mocked and underestimated into a confident young musician who had the courage to share her passion with the world. The journey had been challenging, filled with doubt and criticism, but the rewards were profound. She had discovered her own strength, the beauty of music, and the impact of dedication and perseverance. As she continued to play and grow, she carried the lessons of the talent show with her. She knew that obstacles would arise, that fear and doubt would return, but she also knew that she had the tools to overcome them. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a symbol of resilience, courage, and the power of following one's passion. With each note she played, She celebrated the journey she had taken, the growth she had achieved, and the music that had always been a part of her heart. After the talent show, the girl's life at school began to change in ways she had never imagined. The applause and admiration she had received lingered in her mind, giving her a sense of confidence that was new and powerful. Students who had once mocked her approached her with respect, some quietly complimenting her talent, others asking questions about how she had learned to play so beautifully. She noticed that the laughter and teasing that had been so constant before had diminished, replaced by curiosity and appreciation. Despite the newfound recognition, the girl remained humble. She knew that her journey had only just begun, and that there was still so much to learn and explore in the world of music. Every day she returned to the piano with renewed passion, eager to practice, experiment, and create new melodies. She discovered that music was an endless journey, with endless possibilities, and that each day brought new lessons and experiences. Her teachers began to encourage her to perform at school events and community gatherings. At first, the thought of playing in front of larger audiences was daunting, but she remembered the feeling of standing on the stage during the talent show and how powerful it had been to share her music with others. She realized that performance was not just about showing off skills, but about connecting with people, conveying emotions, and creating a shared experience through music. As she continued to perform, her confidence grew. She developed a sense of stage presence, learning how to control her nerves and focus on the music rather than the audience. Each performance became an opportunity to express herself fully, to tell stories through the melodies she played, and to bring joy to those who listened. She began to see that music had the power to touch hearts and change perceptions, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment in being able to share that gift. The girl also began to notice the impact her journey had on others. Students who had been hesitant or afraid to try new things began to see her as an example of what dedication and passion could achieve. Some of them started learning instruments themselves, inspired by her commitment and courage. Teachers praised her not only for her talent, but for her resilience and determination, recognizing that she had turned obstacles into opportunities and fear into motivation. Her family continued to support her, proud of her growth and accomplishments. They listened attentively to her performances, offered encouragement, and celebrated her successes no matter how small. Their support provided a steady foundation, reminding her that she was not alone on her journey and that her passion for music was valued and appreciated. The girl's relationship with music deepened. She began composing her own pieces, experimenting with different styles and techniques, and exploring the emotional range of the piano. Each composition was a reflection of her experiences, her struggles, and her triumphs. Music became a language through which she could communicate feelings that words could not express, a way to share her inner world with others. She realized that her love for music was not just about playing notes, but about expressing herself, connecting with people, and creating something meaningful. As she matured, she also learned valuable life lessons from her journey. She understood that obstacles and criticism were inevitable, but they could be overcome with patience, persistence, and self-belief. She learned that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. She discovered that hard work and dedication could lead to growth and transformation, and that success was often the result of consistent effort rather than sudden talent. Her experiences with mockery and doubt also shaped her character. She developed empathy for others who faced similar challenges, understanding the pain of being underestimated or dismissed. She became encouraging and supportive, offering guidance to peers who were struggling or hesitant. Her journey taught her that helping others, sharing knowledge, and inspiring confidence could be as rewarding as personal achievement. Over time, the girl's reputation as a talented pianist grew. She performed at school concerts, community events, and even local competitions. Each performance brought new opportunities, new challenges, and new experiences. But she faced them with the confidence and resilience she had cultivated over the years. Her dedication to music never wavered, and she continued to practice diligently, always striving to improve and grow. She also developed a deeper appreciation for the role of perseverance in achieving her goals. She remembered the early days when she had been mocked for her efforts, when her fingers trembled over the keys, and when doubt had threatened to stop her. Looking back, she realized that every difficult moment, every tear, and every hour of practice had been necessary to reach the level she had achieved. The journey had taught her the value of patience, the importance of self-belief, and the strength that comes from pursuing a passion relentlessly. As she continued to share her music with others, she noticed that her performances had a profound impact on the audience. People were moved, inspired, and uplifted by her playing. Some expressed that her music gave them hope, comfort, or a sense of connection. The girl realized that music had the power to transcend words and touch hearts in ways that were deeply meaningful. She felt a sense of purpose in being able to share that gift with the world. The girl's story became an inspiration to many. She showed that it was possible to overcome ridicule, doubt, and fear through dedication, perseverance, and passion. She demonstrated that true talent is nurtured through consistent effort, and that courage can transform challenges into opportunities. Her journey encouraged others to pursue their dreams, to embrace their passions, and to believe in themselves, regardless of obstacles or criticism. Reflecting on her journey, the girl felt a deep sense of gratitude. She was grateful for the piano that had been her companion and teacher, for the teachers who had guided and encouraged her, for her family who had supported her quietly but steadfastly, and for the experiences that had shaped her into the person she had become. She understood that her journey was a continuous process, one that would evolve and grow as she continued to learn, perform, and create. Ultimately, the girl realized that the true reward of her journey was not the applause, the recognition, or the accolades, but the discovery of her own strength, resilience, and passion. Music had become an integral part of her identity, a source of joy, expression, and connection. She had transformed from a girl who was mocked and underestimated into a confident young musician, capable of touching hearts and inspiring others through her art. Her story stood as a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and self-belief. It showed that obstacles could be overcome, that fear could be faced, and that talent, when nurtured with dedication and courage, could shine brightly. The girl had proven that music was not just a skill, but a language of the heart, a means to express, inspire, and connect. With each note she played, she celebrated her journey, her growth, and the boundless possibilities that lay ahead. She knew that her love for music would continue to guide her, inspire her, and shape her life in ways she had yet to imagine.